Alright, guys, gals, and everything in between. Another week, another glorious episode of The Strain has wrapped, and I think that this episode honestly was a lot better than last week's. I think that this had a little better balance of sustenance and then some of that just extra stuff we like to get from The Strain. We had a lot of things in motion this week on The Strain. We started off with that really humorous segment where they're playing chess. And Dutch actually has something to do for once in the show, especially in this season. She's really had no point at all. But now, finally, we have a real point for Dutch. And she's sitting there, like, talking down to F about how in 6 moves she's got him beat. And he's just like, no, no, no. And you can hear Strigoi in the background. And now we've kind of established that we just live in a world with Strigoi all the time. But you can tell that they're taking it more or less not as seriously. So then, of course, the Strigoi pop out, and you see this genuine chemistry between F and Dutch. And they're killing vampires and stabbing at them, and a couple really close calls. And so you get these thrills and chills, and then they've taken them alive. So looking back on this episode, I do have to say, I feel like they're severely underusing Gus, because Gus wasn't even in this episode, and he's not really had a memorable part in the last couple episodes, and I really love Gus as a character. I just want to say I really hope they keep bringing him back in, because he is a very important character in the books. That complaint aside, I loved the just sort of mix of humor and action we got with this episode, because then you have Fett, where he's got his old classic rebar and he's just bludgeoning Strigoi over the head and stapling tracking devices on the back of their head, and he's sitting there and he's quite literally just like, "What's good?" and runs off. And I was like, okay, so we're seeing our characters in motion doing these things, getting just enjoyment out of them. I thought that was quite nice. Satrakian and Quinlan are, of course, still studying photocopied pages of the book for the Lumen. I enjoyed personally, as kind of like their banter back and forth as they're reading the photocopied pages. And Satrakian, of course, not really trusting him anymore, and saying like, oh, well, they say that these hunters are normally like lone wolves. Glad to see that's not you. And Satrakian's just kind of sitting there like, yeah, you say that. It's my boy Satrakian. And finally, after a lot of time, we get a flashback again, back into the 70s with young Satrakian. I love the actor who plays young Satrakian. He's absolutely fantastic. And we see him go into like this adult Louvre club, and he's looking for the German. We all know he's looking for Achord. That was actually some of my favorite parts of the episode as a whole, is the flashback to the 70s, where we're getting these glimpses of kind of what's to come, what they're alluding to in the present day. And so I really liked seeing just Satrakian's dark vampire hunting past, where he's going through and he runs into one of the old Nazis, one of the doctors who did experiments on them in World War II. And I thought that was just an excellent redemption, where then all of a sudden young Satrakian is just fighting him and doing cool things, like he throws the flashbang grenade and starts blowing him up, and realizes in there that the people who were helping him paid the ultimate price in that messed up laboratory area to show he's still continuing out his experiments. I thought that whole segment was just riveting, especially in the oh so satisfying part when young Satrakian sits there and is just kind of like, I don't think your limbs will grow back if I cut them off, despite the fact that you'll stay alive. And it's just sawing the limbs off, and goo is everywhere. In the present, we have F doing more experiments with Dutch and figuring out maybe that microwaves could short circuit them, because you get to look at the Strigoi anatomy. They, for a while now, haven't shown a lot of the science and the biology behind this world, which they were doing so much in season 1, which I loved. But now we're getting it again. And he's showing us, like, as he's doing autopsies and looking at the Strigoi brain and the way the worms move, that maybe microwaves are it. And I was really interested with that, where he's explaining it, and then we see Dutch using what she knows, which is technology and explaining microwaves. This should just cause them to short circuit. I thought that was really interesting. I was getting all of that intrigue going with it, and of course, the experiment goes awry. They're figuring out, they're adapting faster than we can figure them out. So then by the time we start to figure them out, they're 2 steps ahead of us. And it just keeps causing us to lose ground and lose ground. You really get this feeling of desperation throughout the episode, which the books did so well of conveying that this is kind of a hopeless battle. And you really feel that in this episode when they're starting to get their triumph on this really confused Strigoi, and all of a sudden it doesn't work again, and they're just downtrodden. You feel it, and I love that they have that in there, because I felt that. I was like, oh, I thought we were close. Satrakian is, of course, getting closer to his goal as he's looking at some of the pictures of the Lumen. Quinlan and him are starting to trust each other some more, so I really like that you see this sort of friendship building between the 2 of them. And we, of course, get him finding about the sunlight, and they did that really cool where all of a sudden he's looking through it, and he's like, wait a minute, I think I know what. And he looks through the sunlight, because the Egyptian hieroglyphs are really the key to this. And it reveals what they need to know in the sunlight. I do have to say, I did think it was a little bit too perfect that he essentially turned to the perfect page he needs. I would imagine there'd be multiple pages that have that hidden text. But I understand, for a TV show, we don't want to just have him continuously looking at pages. That would be very interesting. We see how that again correlates with the flashback, where Satrakian has done this before, and that's what they need to do to the Master in order to beat him, is not necessarily kill him, but just lock him away forever. And that is where you can see now where the rest of this season is going. This really laid down the groundwork and said, all right, we've said what the stakes are at. Here's our end target. Boom. We now know what the stakes are because we're over the hill now. And it's all set and everything's in motion. Of course, Fett doing his research being awesome. I had to save this for last because Fett had this really great fight scene where the Strigoi are digging new tunnels. And that was amazing, where all of a sudden Fett is just fighting people with the rebar, and he throws that Strigoi onto the tractor drilling device thing, and it just explodes everywhere, and it would totally have gotten on Fett, but he's Fett, so it doesn't matter, and he's awesome. Now we see our stakes are raised. We are pretty much on a time crunch. Eldritch Palmer is sick, and Satrakian, in the first time in years, makes an uneasy deal with him. I loved the way this episode was shaped and played out. It was the perfect pacing. You got a little bit of dose of everything. I am so happy with this episode. It just leads all the more anticipation. Like, I was sitting there going, I want more in the next episode. I want more. I just keep wanting more. And that's what these episodes are supposed to do. So I was expecting a little bigger for a halfway mark through the season, but I'm okay with that because we got this really great and juicy story details. So, what did you guys think of the episode? Did you guys think it was as good as I did? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got plenty more videos coming to you. Love you guys.